Hello, everyone. This is Peter Granich. I would remind you this is not to be considered investment advice. Always speak to a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decision and read my disclosures. Well, something that I've told you that we hope to continue to do on a monthly basis. Joining me in a moment will be Michael Gentile. We'll be speaking to him not only about his broad view of his money management business from looking at the markets, but then he puts on his hat of his individual investments into the junior resource market. And what's going to happen also is we're going to learn for the first time today of an investment he most recently made. This is the first time he's speaking about us. And joining us right now to discuss that along with Michael is the CEO of that company, Rob McLeod of Cambria Gold Mines. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, Peter.
Hi, Peter. Great to be on.
Well, Rob and I go back a long way. It was good to see him again. It's been quite a while since we talked, but we brought back some old times. But he has a most interesting project. But before Rob, we get to it, we're going to ask Michael what motivated him to become and write what I think, Michael, you can correct me, one of the biggest first checks you've ever written into a company.
Yeah, one of the largest single checks I've made in any investment for a first check in a junior resource company. So, Cambria Gold Mines is Rob's project. Got to hear the story late last year. It's the old Ascot, which Rob will walk you through. Had some negative connotations associated with the past failed operation. But what really attracts me, Peter, I talk all the time about this, right? My favorite type of investments are assets that have the size, the scale, the geology, and the infrastructure to become a mine. What was really unique about Cambria, first of all, it's one of the bigger market caps I've invested my own money in recently. Usually I'm earlier on in the story or a smaller market cap, but what really attracted me to Rob and Cambria is that everything is already in place. Essentially, the mine is fully built. So I'm not looking for good infrastructure. They've got the mill, they've got the underground access, they've got the resource, they got all the vast majority of infrastructure is already in place, ready to pour gold. The previous operator tried to pour gold, bad market conditions, bad operations, bad management, end up going into default. So basically, you're buying, a turnkey operation. I mean, the house is almost fully built, and you're picking it up for pennies on the dollar. There's over $550 million of money invested already in this mine. And the one thing that was holding it back was capital required to get it over the goal line and a team capable of doing it. So when I saw the team that Rob built around him, and importantly, I saw they were raising, I think, $170 million on the last financing. You're walking into a story today with upwards of $150, $200 million in cash and the team in place ready to execute the final stages to be a gold producer in the very, very near term at still a very, very low valuation. So that's what initially attracted me to the company, why I made a big investment. Why I have not talked about it till today, Peter, is because it was 4-month old paper. Rob and the team raised, said $170 million. The vast majority of the shares outstanding today are from that financing, and they're only coming free trading today, the vast majority today and about a month ago. And so I really want to see the stock settle and trade at a kind of free trading price. That's today. The free trading stock's providing an incredible opportunity for people to get in pretty close to the financing price and ahead of the major catalysts that Rob has for the market. The final piece of the puzzle, I always say it's better to be good, but better to be lucky and good at the same time. Post my investment, Rob had a few non-core assets in the portfolio, and as he was going through his, I guess, his sock drawer in his house, he found one of the largest copper mines undeveloped in the U.S. called Mount Margaret. The company owned. That was not a previous focus for the company, but under the new Trump administration, they are guns blazing to bring new copper deposits into production. Mount Margaret, Peter, I think it's, Rob will correct me, the third largest undeveloped copper asset in the US. Spectacular grade and much, much bigger than previously believed. And to top it off, the US administration is extremely interested and focused in moving this asset forward as quickly as possible. And so this copper asset that's kind of emerging behind the scenes beyond the gold mine that I think I bought that's going to be producing a lot of cash flow in the near future, this copper asset could there be worth more than the gold operation. And you got that for free. So we got a 2-for-1 special. Really excited to introduce Rob to your viewers who don't yet know him and the Cambria story. It's definitely one that investors are going to want to pay a very close attention to, and the timing is very exciting what's going on with the company right now.
So, Rob, bringing you into this, you and I have been around a long time. Is there any video of when you realized, because when you first took over this main asset, you had no real idea about this situation? Is there any video photoing you of what you look like when you realized what they actually had?
Well, It takes me back to when I was in grade two. I grew up in Stewart, BC, which is the mining town near the gold assets, near the Premier and Red Mountain deposit. And this is in the 1970s. And I was riding my bike home for lunch, and I see laying on the side of the road a $100 bill. And so that was a lot of money in that era. And it was one of the greatest feelings ever thinking about, I can get comic books and all the candy and stuff I can buy and buy hockey cards. And this really was the same feeling. This is found money. I always knew that there was this copper asset in the U.S., but I thought it was much smaller and much lower grade. And as Michael said, there isn't. This is a very significant. This is a unicorn copper gold asset in the United States with a very key component. It is co-owned by the federal government of the United States. And it's truly remarkable, and it's going to deliver a lot of value for Cambria Gold shareholders.
So why don't we do this, Rob? Let's start off with the so-called Christmas in June scenario of this project. Talk about it, and then talk what you plan on hopefully do with it, and then we'll go to the project that originally brought Michael's attention to it. So the floor is yours.
All right, so I'll pull up my presentation. And so, I have a deep history with this cover photo here is the Premier mine located near my hometown of Stewart. I'm a third generation miner that worked here. Before we started the call, you mentioned my colorful Uncle Don, who's in the Mining Hall of Fame. He used to work here. In fact, he built a mill. My grandfather worked at this mine. My dad worked at this mine. My cousin Bruce McLeod worked here. I started my career here. This is my passion project. This is my destiny, is to make this thing work. But as Michael said, the irony is that this Mount Margaret project could actually be worth a lot more, because there hasn't been a mine like this built in the United States in 50 years. It's got a really interesting history. The Mount Margaret deposit was discovered in the 1970s by a company that's not around anymore. It's called Duval Mining. They drilled 105 holes in an outcropping copper gold porphyry. This is a historic resource, so you shouldn't rely on it. We will be doing an updated 4311 resource by July. But in 1980, they estimated a resource of 577 million tons at 0.72% copper equivalent. Copper gold with a little bit of silver and molybdenum. The location is interesting. You see a photo there. It was clear-cut logged about 25 years ago. But in 1980, work was halted on this project do you remember when Mount St. Helens erupted?
Yes.
So this deposit is located just to the north of it. And so it was outside of the blast zone where the pyroclastic flows, knocked down all the trees and caused damage and unfortunately killed people. But it halted the work. Bridges were taken out on this project. And it was pretty much ignored until 2010, when Ascot Resources, and this is like 4 management teams ago, junior companies have a lot of different iterations through them over the years. They drilled 10 holes for 5,000 meters. Every single hole ended in copper gold mineralization. And so, I can take you through just quickly to, actually, we can start with a plan view here. And so you see the colored, this looks like a fried egg with a bite out of it. All the black dots are the historic holes. The limits to the copper gold mineralization have not been found across strike. This was drilled in the 70s, and there was an older geological model that was called the onion skin alteration model by Lowell and Gilbert. These were 2 porphyry gurus. At the time, they thought, don't drill the potassic core. So the potassic core of this deposit has never been drilled. Here, this dashed line is the outline of the historic resource. They used a 0.3% copper cutoff. That's the lowest grade you can, you would think that you could conceptually mine. Today, the lowest cutoffs for most North American deposits is in around 0.1. So see these holes? only 0.2% copper. That's high grade in a lot of mines, particularly here in British Columbia. Here's the 2010 holes, doubled the down dip extent from the 577 million ton resource. See this? It outcrops on surface. There's no strip ratio to this. Phenomenal grades, beautiful bornite copper gold mineralization, wide open at depth. This truly is a remarkable deposit, and here was the real key part. When we took over management of Ascot, changed the name to Cambria Gold back in January, we compiled the data for this. We found that the co-owner of this deposit is the federal government of the United States. The BLM owns 50%. Cambria Gold can get a 100% interest by building a mine and starting to produce copper. So it's kind of like an earn-in. And the BLM would get a 1.5% NSR. Finding this, I sent an email to President Trump has a critical mineral czar, a person named David Copley. And that we co-own with you. What do you want to do with it? He asked me, hey, can you meet me in the White House later on this week? So my partner Ryan Waymark and I hopped on a plane and we came out to see him. And it started off a process that we, to be honest, we can barely keep up with how fast they want to advance this. So critical minerals are very important to all countries, but there's particularly an emphasis from the U.S. government. So the next week, we're meeting with the director of the BLM. Over 100,000 people work there. All the regional heads, the Forest Service, investment opportunities. And so we will be spinning this out, but the U.S. wants domestic production, domestic mining companies. We're a Canadian company. I'm a Canadian. My passion projects are in Canada, close to Alaska, but still in Canada. We are going to be spinning this out into a new U.S. domiciled listed entity with a U.S. management team, and there is nothing like this in America. This is a tremendous, tremendous deposit. This is just like finding that $100 bill, but add a lot more zeros at the end of it.
So, Rob, when you say you're spinning it up, if you're going to be going on to your next one, I'm assuming, and I am assuming, because Cambria is still going to own a significant or still major stake even after the spin out?
Yeah, our current structure, Peter, is that Cambria Gold shareholders will own 49.9% in the parent company. We will also be dividending out probably about 15% of the asset to new shareholders. So that's our current vision.
Okay.
We are looking to raise a minimum of 100 million US on this project, using a post-money valuation at around 200 million. So that's still, all those numbers are still being finalized, but expect some news on this spin out. So this is going to be exceptionally good for Cambria shareholders. We're going to welcome new investors that are going to come in to capitalize and to rapidly advance this project as quickly as possible. And so this is, this coincides well with our free trading date. It's an incentive for a lot of shareholders to hold on to get that dividend. It's going to be at a zero cost base. And to be able to put this asset on Cambria Gold's balance sheet, in addition to these near-term gold mines, it's in fact like a second project. And so it really, really has found money.
I just want to add, that's very important what you just said there. As Michael started, he didn't because of all the stock that came free trading. But you're right. This is something if just to get rid of simply because it's come free trading, I'd have to think 2 or 3 times harder on that, knowing that this doesn't sound like this is many, many months away before this spin out's going to occur.
Yeah, we should be announcing that shortly. We've been in discussions with our bankers. We've identified a shell company. And the purpose, we would list this company on either the NASDAQ or more likely the New York Stock Exchange. We've hired our first member of management, and there'll be more announcements as we build up the new U.S. focused management team to rapidly advance this deposit. But also at the same time, Washington State has certain sensitivities within our group, and certainly, with several of my passions, particularly to work with Indigenous people, is that we will be very cognizant of certain sensitivities that they have in Washington State. But this is federal land, and this is the U.S. needs copper. I believe 60% of the U.S.'s copper is imported every year. And, after Pebble in Alaska and Resolution in Arizona, this is very likely the next largest deposit. But who knows? It's wide open. See these cross sections, guys. It's wide open for expansion. There's no drilling around these holes. It's no drilling at depth. So,
All right,
so
Rob.
it's
So your appetizer was lovely.
okay. So let's get into the main course. I'm going to go on to the Red Mountain. So this is a little more convoluted because there's one mill, there's two properties, and there's four deposits. Combined, we look to operate all of these different deposits with the vision of a significant gold producer. Like our target's in and around, and we'll have an updated feasibility study at the end of the year, but a minimum sort of 150,000 ounce per year gold producer. So, Michael said at the beginning, there's a tremendous amount of value here. The previous management team spent over $500 million building a brand new Cadillac mill. Like, it is great. It needs a couple of key components to it that we want to upgrade, but it's wonderful. So much value there. There's 6 kilometers of recently constructed underground drifting on 2 deposits. There's $430 million in tax pools. That's really helpful. Water treatment plant, tailings facilities. So at near the mill, we call it the Premier Gold Project. There's 3 deposits there that are high grade, but as well as bulk mineable. We're taking a different approach. The previous management team failed because they could not fill that mill. This is a type of mill where the ore grinds itself. And so you need to have enough tons, enough working faces from underground to be able to fill it. We've identified some areas we can get with some shallow open pits, and we are reimagining some of the deposits based on comparing with the previous management's interpretations that are much more in line with how these deposits were mined by the old timers. You see, Premier was the richest mine in North America for 15 years. It never produced more than 400 tons per day because the old timers focused on ounces, not tons. One of the deposits nearby, called Big Missouri, was an underground bulk mine operation operated by Cominco. It's not a high grade like the previous management team thought. So we think we can supply the tons from it. But the crown jewel in the portfolio is the Red Mountain deposit. Highest grade, bulk mineable, undeveloped deposit in Canada. And that is going to be the key profit driver. It doesn't need any more drilling. There's 544,000 ounces at a little under 9 grams per ton. The whole ore body averages 15 meters wide, or close to 50 feet wide. Gets up to 300 feet wide at its widest spot. First 2 years, resource grade's 10.5 grams per ton at an 80-foot thickness. So that will supply the real profit for the combined operations. The key catalyst to develop Red Mountain is getting a road built. Next week, we will be announcing that we are officially underway with the road construction. And that's going to be one of the real key catalysts. So it's going to take 2 years to build it for this operation.
Rob, let me just ask you to repeat that. We lost you for a few seconds, and I know that's a critical part of what's happening. Just say that again, please.
So we are restarting. We're starting the construction of the road. The road to Red Mountain is going to take 2 years to construct. So we're expecting that we'll start trucking some ore in 2028 to the Premier Mill. We expect 75% of the gold to come from Red Mountain and 25% or so to come from the Premier area deposits. So you're going to have a really nice, sustainable mine that is also wide open for expansion. You know, exploration is important, and I'm a huge believer in the exploration potential for these deposits, but I don't anticipate doing a lot of exploration drilling until we're producing some gold bars. The biggest catalyst for investors to look at these projects will be in the fourth quarter this year, where we will publish an updated feasibility study where we will be looking at processing very high grades over a good long mine life. And I think the economics are really, really going to surprise investors. You know, it's our goal to be one of the lowest cost producers globally. Grade really is key, and that's what these deposits have. Finally, I want to talk about our shareholder base because it really is tremendous. We have a very unique shareholder that is our largest shareholder that owns about 36% of the company. And I can just quickly go to our share structure. They're a Peruvian company called Coriapu. They're a private family-owned business that we have a great relationship with. They operate a 300,000 ounce per year mine in Peru, and they own 36% of the company and are very supportive of what we're doing. Otherwise, we have a tremendous amount of institutional investors. I'm feeling shame because I don't see Michael Gentile's shop listed here for institutional holders, but we have great groups such as Franklin Templeton that's reporting over 10%, Libra, Delbrook, Ruffer, Primevest, which is a great Vancouver company, Nero, also not on here, APAC. And so the financing that is coming free trading, it was mostly institutional. And our institutional investors, like Michael, they're long. They're in for multiples on this. So if we're looking for analogs for companies that have performed really well recently, Peter, and you probably have followed both of these, Skeena Resources to the north of us and Artemis to the east. And so those were companies that as they're getting closer to production, really drove significant value. So those are two analogs that we're really going to pursue. So in terms of closing, and you can go to our website to get more details on the road construction, the geology, the resources that are in the ground, histories of our management team, histories of myself. We've got a lot of great material on social media, on whether on X or LinkedIn or Instagram, to learn more about these projects. But in terms of the value proposition here, it's truly exceptional. There isn't anything like us out there. You have a recently constructed mill with millions of ounces of resource in multiple deposits that are open for expansion at very good grades in an excellent jurisdiction on some of the lowest cost grid power in the world with great road access, wonderful shareholder base. You know, to quote one of our largest shareholders, one of the biggest problems, and Michael alluded to it at the beginning, the Ascot Resources was always undercapitalized. That's not the case here anymore. We have over $125 million of in-the-money warrants that can also bring in additional capital. We've had the first bit that have been exercised over the past couple of weeks, exercised by large shareholders, but not selling. We have a team that these are my passion projects. Aside from maybe Charlie Gregg, I don't know if you've met him, nobody knows more about the geology of this part of the world than I do. And so I try to go through life with humility, but that's the case, mostly because I understand the history of how the old timers mined these. And so this is a really unmatched gold deposits in British Columbia that are near term to cash flow. And then we have this found money, and Michael mentioned it, and it's so ironic, but Mount Margaret has the potential to be worth significantly more of these because it truly is a unicorn. Whether you're Newmont, Freeport, Barrick, Rio Tinto, Hudbay, any company wants a near-surface copper gold porphyry. And we've got one of the best ones on the planet that has gone under the radar by the global mining industry for 45 years.
So, Rob, before we let you go, I have one comment/question, and I'm sure Michael wants to. I noticed on there, Fiore Group, this would be the first time I could do something that can get me excited because Fiore Group is another person that I've always, as I do with Michael Gentile, when I think mining and metals, if he's involved, you better take a look at it. And that's Frankie Juster. So tell us a little bit about Fiore Group. Are you part of that?
Yeah, I'm a partner with Frank. And so what we've been specializing in over the past few years, and Frank's done so many wonderful things. He's built amongst the biggest mining companies globally, is that a few things. We've been specializing in looking for opportunities when they're the most hated. And so you take something like last fall, we launched Selkirk Copper Mines, buying the Minto mine in the Yukon out of bankruptcy, but with a difference. We partnered with the Selkirk First Nation to buy that mine. Investors are up 4x from that initial listing in November of 2025. And so Frank's got such a great nose for these assets. He's very supportive of our technical group. I'm a geologist. My partner Ryan Waymark and Frank's partner, he's a mining engineer. And so we look for these deep value plays, fully capitalize them, bring in great management teams, and let them take off and into the stratosphere. West Red Lake was the first one we launched. They're going through a few startup hiccups right now. That's okay. But Pure Gold was the most hated company, and Madsen was the most hated asset when we picked that up for a few $1 million. And so we're within Fiore. I believe we have the top mining group in Canada right now. We have Ryan has over 50 mining engineers that are working out of this office. We've raised over $1 billion in the past couple of years for various companies. And it's also a critical component to any of these companies is we do a lot of marketing. It's important that investors see what it is that we're doing. So we have the depth to support companies like Cambria Gold Mines, and it's great to have Frank as our spiritual leader to help guide us through to success.
Well, I'm going to let Michael finish, but knowing Frank and where he'd been located, since you guys look at the most hated, any chance you guys may be looking to buy the Vancouver Canucks?
That was a low blow, Peter.
Well, you got to remember, I was considered in the days when we spoke together at shows as the Antichrist of Canuck fans, so I had to get that one in. Michael, before we let Rob go, any questions or comments to Rob?
Yeah, just a few things. I mean, Rob did a terrific job. But just, he mentioned Skeena and Artemis, but just to give your viewers an idea of what a 150,000 ounce per year gold mine trades in the market today. You look at a company like Wesdome produces a similar amount of gold production in Canada. I think it's got a $4 billion market cap. Company Hemlo is trading at $2 billion, just getting back into production now. So we're playing for multiples of our money here. What I like about this is, again, the vast majority of the work has been done. I think Rob and his team have identified the right path forward to make this mine work. And like Rob said, and I know he's a humble guy, but like not many people know more about this area than Rob in the world. So you got the right team, the right people, the right opportunity. You're playing for 150,000 gold, 150,000 ounce per day gold producer in Canada is extremely valuable, coveted. Most of them are getting acquired or are looking to be acquired because they're very, very coveted in Canada. So you've got that. That's extremely rare. And then, like Rob said, you've got the copper asset, which could easily be worth the same or more in a scenario. So I really like the optionality of this company. It's well financed. The last piece that Rob didn't mention, which also attracted me, Peter, usually in junior mining, I'm trying to buy the junior miners that are proximal to mills. So we own the mill at Cambria here, but maybe Rob, you could speak to the other deposits in and around that we don't own today, but that, would when you own the mill, you kind of have the keys to the district. That also really attracted me. Longer term, this mill is going to not only be filled by our ore, but other potential sources of ore in and around the mines. There's a regional consolidation opportunity that makes this project even more compelling to me. So probably I'm going to spend a couple minutes on that before I let you go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The optionality is tremendous, and again, I know all these deposits well, and know where the hair is, and know where the opportunities are. That mill is permitted for 2,500 tons per day. If we amend our permits, you can get it up to 3,000 tons per day. And you have great deposits like Scotty Resources up to the north. They're rapidly advancing their deposits, particularly the near surface Blueberry Zone. That's right. The road to Scotty goes right past the mill. Then to the south of Red Mountain, There's the former Dolly Varden Silver, which is now Contango Gold and Silver. I was a director of Dolly, and my friend Sean Kuhn has partnered with Rick Van Nieuwenhuis on those assets. In addition to their Homestake Ridge deposit, which has geology very, very similar to Premier, is they also have two deposits in Alaska that they are looking for direct shipping ore opportunities. So looking for a mill to process from their Lucky Shot deposit or their Johnson Tract deposit. Additionally, there's other deposits in the Golden Triangle that are doing direct shipping ore way further away. And so we really see a scalability here. And we also see, if there's any M&A, we'd be fools not to look for those type of opportunities in the near future, as long as they're accretive to both companies. So I really do see a good play for further consolidation in the near future for the Golden Triangle. And is one of the things that, as well as you, Michael, Frank Juster liked is the scalability of this opportunity. And there's going to be more discoveries that are made up in the Golden Triangle too. So this could be a great mill for many decades, producing ore from all over the place. So it's pretty cool. It's great for my hometown of Stewart and nearby Hyder, Alaska.
Well, Rob, I got to tell you something. This is the first time I'm hearing it. Of course, I know of your background. And of course, I obviously know of Frank's. And now with Michael Gentile being involved, I think it's a really great story. And this found story of opening up and looking at something and that it can be so positively impacted at a time when it really comes really attractive to those that are shareholders now. So best wishes, good seeing you, and my apologies for my Canucks comment.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Wonderful to see you, Peter. And maybe one day we can host you up at the mines. I don't know if you go to many site tours anymore, but we would love to host you, and you can see all the gold and all the potential with your own eyes maybe this summer.
I appreciate that. And if Gentili goes, then I'll go to carry his bags.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Okay. Thanks, guys.
God bless.
Okay.
All right, Michael Gentili. Very interesting story, Mike. Very, very interesting story. And I have to say, this would be the first chance to buy something that Justa and Gentili's in. But I know you didn't buy it for that. But that's that's very unique. I remember it now. I remember when that was touted and all. But wow. And then to get it and then open the drawer to look at, well, what are the other assets and find that thing? That's just unbelievable.
Extremely rare, Peter, that I invest in a company with at least for our first check with a 150 or $200 million market cap. But when I saw the package of assets that they had, the path to production, the team, the people, the capital, it really, really resonated with me, Peter. And that's why I wanted you to speak to Rob today and have your viewers hear the story for the first time. And and the copper asset, it's truly like those two assets you talked about, Peter, Pebble and Resolution. Those are both high profile, controversial assets. This is going to be much easier. Resolution's like 2 kilometers below the ground. Pebbles in a very sensitive area of Alaska. This is right at surface, really high grade. That's why the U.S. administration, I think, is so excited about moving this forward. And so that's going to come on the radar screen right ahead, I think.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about the marks, but I just want to put a cherry on top of what you said. You didn't speak of this till it became free trading, which you did a service to potential shareholders. I mean, people aren't going to realize that, but this was a lot higher a month or two ago. But now, as these shares came free trading, there's always going to be some people that sell. And also now with that behind, what was interesting about that was, and he made a very good point. I have to think twice about selling it now if one of those guys hold it and hold half the warrant because I'm not going to be able to participate. I'm going to get a spin out of this company. That's a very interesting. You talk about an extra special fine that could actually handle this transition much better than normal.
Agreed.